You know that feeling when it seems like the ground is just shaking beneath your feet? That's what we're diving into today. What happens when our comfort zones get completely shattered and what it really truly means to break free.
So let's just jump right in with a pretty big question, okay? What if that safe space you've built for yourself, that cozy, predictable little world, what if it's not a sanctuary at all? What if it's actually a cage? And here's the tricky part, right? The reason this cage works so well is because, well, most of the time, you can't even see the bars. We're living inside what our source for this explainer calls an invisible box.
So what is this comfort zone, really? Think of it like this. It's an invisible box, a box that we build around ourselves. And it's not made of wood or steel or anything you can touch. It's made of something way, way stronger: familiarity. It's all about the routine, the stuff we already know, that predictable path that just makes us feel safe.
But what happens when that box, the one that feels so incredibly solid, just cracks? The author of the piece we're looking at shares this really powerful story about the first time her whole world was completely turned on its head.
See, before this big moment, her life had a certain rhythm to it. Kind of like a game of snakes and ladders. You know how it goes. You make some progress, maybe you hit a snake and slide back a bit, but overall, you feel like you're moving in the right direction. Nothing feels like a total disaster.
And then, crisis hits, hard. Her father, who was the family's provider, gets sick. And this one quote, man, it just captures the devastation perfectly. The central support of their entire world was gone. It was like the whole game board just got flipped over.
Okay, but what's really fascinating is the perspective she got on this years down the road. At the time, it felt like a punishment. But looking back, she saw it for what it was. It wasn't punishment, it was training. Life was basically forging this incredible resilience in her, an inner strength that, turns out, she was really going to need later on.
But of course, a travel like that leaves a mark, a deep one. It created this powerful, almost subconscious drive to avoid that kind of pain ever again. And that led to a whole new life strategy. Just cling to safety, no matter what it costs you.
And this pattern didn't show up in some huge, dramatic decision. Nope, it was in the small, everyday choices. Staying in situations a little too long just because they were familiar. It was a strategy for surviving, not for thriving, all in the name of being responsible.
Her job? Well, that became the ultimate comfort zone. The story she was telling herself was, I'm so lucky to have this stable job. But the reality? Yeah, that was a totally different story. That stability was basically a myth. People were getting laid off unexpectedly, while other folks who took a leap and resigned, they were out there thriving. So this pattern, right, choosing the familiar over what might actually be fulfilling, this went on for years. Until another crack appeared in that invisible box. And this time, it was one that would force her to finally confront this behavior she'd had her whole life. And you know what the trigger was? Something surprisingly normal. Just another rent increase. Now, she knew she was overpaying. She knew dealing with her landlord was a total headache. But every single year, she just agreed to it. Why? Because the discomfort of finding a new place and moving, well, that felt way worse than the quiet, nagging discomfort of just staying put.
But this time, something was different. She had this huge realization. She understood that saying yes again wasn't just about the money. Not at all. It was about choosing, consciously, to live at the mercy of other people forever. It was basically a vote to stay in the cage.
And that single realization, it sparked a massive shift in her mindset. It was a conscious decision to stop just enduring life and to start choosing it. It was a decision to become sovereign.
That became her word for the year. Just that one word, sovereign. And look, we're not talking about being a queen with a castle. Not in the literal sense. We're talking about being the ruler of your own life, your own choices, your own destiny.
So, this decision really marked a fundamental shift, right? The old way was all about enduring, just passively taking whatever life decided to throw at you. But the new way, that's about navigating. It's about actively using the tools and skills you have to decide your own path and absolutely refusing to compromise your own well-being anymore.
And to really get into this new mindset, she started asking herself totally different kinds of questions. Instead of questions based on fear and scarcity, she started asking questions based on power and capability. They helped her reframe challenges. They weren't scary threats anymore. They were just necessary steps on the path to building the life she actually wanted.
And this, right here, is the core lesson. The big takeaway. Real power, that true feeling of being sovereign in your own life, it doesn't come from building thicker and thicker walls around your comfort zone. No way. It comes from having the guts to face the very challenges you need to grow beyond it.
So where does this all lead? What's the ultimate takeaway from this whole journey of shattering that invisible box?
Well, looking back, the real cost of staying safe became painfully clear. It wasn't just about the extra rent money or staying in a job that wasn't right. Nope. Every single time she compromised herself, she lost something so much more valuable. She lost the one thing you can never, ever get back: time.
There's a quote from Gary John Bishop that just hits the nail on the head here. It goes, "You have the life you are willing to put up with." Wow. I mean, that's a pretty stark and powerful truth, isn't it? It basically says the quality of your life is directly tied to the level of discomfort you're willing to tolerate.
And so that brings us to a final question, but this one is for you. I want you to take a second and really think about your own invisible box. Where in your life are you staying put, not because it's great or because it makes you happy, but just because it's familiar? And what do you think might be waiting for you on the other side of that wall?